Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Angel, in case you're new here. This is gonna be a reading vlog. We're gonna read some queer sports romance, something that I didn't realize I had a few of on my shelves. So we're gonna read 3 books in this vlog. Let's talk really quickly about them. First one is The Prospect by KT Hoffman. This is about a trans guy named Gene, and he plays on a minor league baseball team. Gene is going to have to play with Luis, who is someone he knew from college, his college sports career, but they didn't have the best of terms with their friendship because Luis kind of just like left very abruptly, never got in contact with him again. And this one, baseball, I'm not very familiar with baseball, so we'll have to see how this one goes. Spoiler alert, I've read all the books at this point, so I'm trying not to just like give you the whole spiel of the story. So we'll have to see how this book goes. Basically, I know how it goes. You're gonna have to keep watching the vlog to find out. Next, I'm gonna read How You Get the Girl by Anita Kelly. This is a female-female romance. We have Julie, who is a high school basketball coach. She used to play basketball in high school and college, but doesn't do it, never went professional with it after that. And then we also have Elle, who was on the WNBA after college and was actually someone that Julie really looked up to. Julie had posters of Elle on her wall and was kind of obsessed with her. But now at this point, Elle is no longer in the WNBA. It was kind of a rough break from the WNBA, and actually Elle is fostering her niece, who is going to be at the high school and playing basketball on Julie's team. Being around each other, these two basketball women are going to basketball women. Anyways, a romance is going to bud. And then the last book we'll read in this vlog is Cleat by Meryl Wilsner. This is about these two women who are on a team together for soccer. We have Phoebe and Grace. Phoebe is kind of just out of college. She gets drafted to this like national level team. Phoebe was obsessed with Grace growing up. They are closer in age though, because Grace she's been playing for like 10 or so years, if not more, on like a national team. Phoebe and Grace they don't clash, but they're very different people. Grace is a bit more of an introvert in the respect that she's just kind of there to play. She knows her role in soccer, and she's been there so long that she's actually considered a veteran, even though she's still very young. And then Phoebe comes in as this huge extrovert. She loves people. She loves to kind of just jump in and get to know everyone, make friends with everyone. And so very quickly, she just wants Grace to be like her best friend, especially because she's looked up to her for a long time. So she's trying to prove herself, but also be like, I want to be friends with my hero. If you're interested in hearing me talk about any of these books at length, please continue watching, and I hope you enjoy the vlog. Originally, I intended to read this book last because it was one that I already started a while back. This is The Prospects by KT Hoffman, and I have it on my e-reader here. And right now, I am about 123 pages in, so about 40% almost. So we have our main character, Gene, who is a trans guy, and he is on this relatively unsuccessful, I don't want to say little league, it's not little league, but minor league baseball game. He's kind of formed this group of queer people in the baseball industry. And we were also introduced to Luis. They went to college together. They played baseball together on the college team. Gene and Luis were pretty close, but then Luis gets called up to the majors and kind of just like writes off Gene. Now Luis is obviously not on a majors team anymore and is kind of signed on to this team because they had a major injury. I think it was like an arm injury or an elbow injury that has made it so they're not as valuable as a player anymore, and they're just not being as successful. There's definitely some animosity between the two, and Gene is starting to be like wanting to prove himself to Luis in a way, and also be like, listen, I'm not the person I was in college. They start to run drills together because Gene is just trying to be as amenable to the situation, trying to make sure that the team isn't struggling because they have this weird history together. I'm loving this a lot because we're seeing so much of Gene on his own, and it's not so focused on the romance yet. The romance is really not a thing yet. It's just kind of this like almost slow burn, like will they, won't they kind of situation. And I don't know really anything about baseball. I think the last time I went to a baseball game was maybe in high school. And even then it wasn't because I was like, I love baseball. It was because I think I got a free ticket. Jose's gone away for a few days to New York, so I have a lot of like TV time, reading time, and I'm gonna really invest that in maybe finishing this today or tomorrow. It's the weekend, so I have plenty of time. So far, I'm really enjoying it. I put this book off for a long time. I think the original time I read it was maybe back in January or February, and I was able to pick it right back up again because I've thought about this book kind of frequently since I started it. I started it in December, holy crap. And I had gotten like 80 pages in at that point, and I keep gravitating toward it because Gene is such like a snarky character. but also just like such a good heart, I guess I could say. They're like constantly thinking about other people on the team and their friendships. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say right now. I think I'm gonna finish up a movie I'm watching and then read a little bit more, and I'll talk to you a little later today about what my thoughts are. Interesting camera angle right here is my Kindle. I realized in the last clip I filmed that it was a weird setup, because you were like here, like you were like well above my head, and it felt very early 2000s, like I've never filmed a YouTube video kind of angle. I just got to part 2. We are here about halfway through, and we finally got our first moment of like, you know, that like will they won't they, like they will, but it was quickly abruptly cut out, and it was a moment of like, oh my god, and then immediately shut down. I wanted to quickly touch on the fact that I feel like their interactions, Jean's and Luis's, it feels so genuine. I read so many, I want to say like extreme romance books where there is this immediate, like not insta love, but like insta fuck. Is that a thing? Especially the like reverse harem, multi-partner, I don't even want to call them, they're not poly, more toxic kind of things happening than good ones. And I feel like I'm so used to that in romance books sometimes that when I read a normal ass romance book, queer or not, that I'm like a little like like I'm like kicking my feet like, oh my god, they're so like normal when it's just because it's relatable, versus like meeting a vampire and being like, yeah, suck my fucking blood. Like, it's different, you know? Some of the awkward moments, like learning about one another, relationship history / like the holding back of information, like, oh, talking about their dads and then not wanting to talk about their dads because they're like, that's too personal. It just is such a much more genuine conversation, which maybe you're reading romance on your own or a normal ass book that isn't just smut and it doesn't come across as weird. But for me, it's like a nice breath of fresh air and further proof that I should have been reading this book before now. Me and Bento are hanging out on the couch. She's cleaning her beans and it's rainy here. I did take a breather though, because after that, I want to find a term that's not like blue balls, because that is so crass. I feel like very pent up after that. Like, I feel like we were getting to a moment of like, oh my god, they're finally gonna do something. And then you get shut the fuck down. I did some doom scrolling on Instagram Reels. I thought about the stock market and panicked, and I think I'm ready to hop back in and get some more lighthearted, like, let's talk about sports and queer love, you know? You're probably thinking, Angel, you've sat in the same place for almost all of these check-ins, probably all of them, and you'd be correct. I'm really locked in to just reading. I haven't read a lot, but it's the most I've probably read in like one sitting / day in a minute. We have officially made it to part 3. About 225 pages in. I don't think I will finish this today. However, I am optimistic that we'll finish it tomorrow. The only breaks I've really taken are to pee, to text Jose to see how his drive to New York is going. I did some dishes. I tended to a little bit of an infected hangnail that I have going on, which is doing fine. And that's it. So we've just kept reading and reading and reading and reading and reading. Since I started this vlog, I've not turned the TV on, which is a very nice feeling. There was also a really sweet moment with both of them and their families, which I really appreciated. It has a lot of like non-romancy vibes. Like, it is definitely a queer romance, but I feel like it is focusing in an amazing way on the characters and their growth, their story. Because sometimes what can happen, again, with the super smutty books, is that it feels like you're like zooming from one intimate scene to the next, whereas this is like really taking its time to develop everyone and make you feel like you understand who they are as individuals. They're not just these brief moments of time. They feel very real. I have finished it, and I'm pleasantly surprised because I really didn't think that I'd be able to finish it in a day. Okay, well, I read 250 pages today, which is very uncommon for me. Like I've said in the past, I feel like ebooks are just like so much easier for me to consume. Like, they're practically, oh, hi Bento. They're honestly just so much quicker, but I don't want to blab about that. I do want to blab about the fact that I gave this 5 stars. And I just genuinely feel like I learned so much about baseball. It was so much more focused on baseball and character development and the development of like Jean and Luis's, which also I feel like it's just Luis, but whatever. I feel like they developed so much separately. I feel like you're just seeing so much of Jean developing as a baseball player. You're also seeing him just struggling in general with his own confidence, because like as time progresses and he just starts to realize that his dreams of becoming like a Major League Baseball player might be dwindling, and just like coming to terms with the realism of his goals and Luis supporting his goal. I don't know, it was so sweet, and I'm gonna be thinking about this one for a long time. That is it. I'm gonna go relax and watch some TV, and I will see you when I'm ready to pick up another book. It's a few days later, and we are starting How You Get the Girl by Anita Kelly. I read another book by this author, and it was weird because I didn't read the first book in that series. I read the second one, and it was Something Wild and Wonderful. It was a male-male romance about this character that goes up the Pacific Northwest Trail for like, I think a few months or a few weeks. And I believe it has to do with grief, but also like just their general relationship with this guy that they meet on the trail, I think. But we're on to this one. And so far, I'm only like 10 or 15 pages in. We have our main characters. We have Elle and Julie. Julie is that coach for the high school team and is like trying to, actually seems like really great at their job, taking a lot of pride and happiness in teaching these high school girls. And then we have Elle, who is the retired WNBA player who has suffered with migraines for a long time, and upon first meeting Julie and trying to like say, hey, my daughter's the new one on the team, is like having this massive migraine and is like being really like short and snippy with Julie. And so like their first interaction is a little tense. But the part that I wasn't expecting is that Julie is like a huge fan of Elle, and used to watch Elle in the WNBA. And so there's this like interesting like fan dynamic there. No, I'm pretty infatuated with these characters already. I need to go do laundry and just in general relax tonight after work, so I'm gonna bring this with me. I wasn't able to find it as an ebook or an audiobook, but that's fine. I didn't get a chance to check in last night. I did read a decent amount at the laundromat. I got to page 60, and this one's a little different in that I think that there is a bit of, not insta love, but Elle, nope. Oh my God, their names are also, the like E's and L's is making me get a little confused as to who I'm thinking about at any given time. The coach, Julie, oh my gosh. I also found out that the daughter that's on the team is not Elle's daughter. This is her niece, and so she's kind of helping out in a situation in which the girl, Vanessa, she had to be kind of taken away from her parents because of some drug issues, it sounds like. But I think a big thing again is going to be like the migraines, because they are so debilitating that Elle is really unable to be herself because she's just so distracted. This is also tying in a bit with the other books that Anita Kelly has read, one of which I obviously read. The other is characters I don't know, but I've read about them so many times that I'm like, oh, I already know who ends up with who. So I probably will come back around to read that one. That one is like a cooking show with a non-binary character and a queer woman. So I don't know. It's definitely different than the other because this is not like actively like in a championship. We're kind of seeing some development with the team. I believe at some point Julie's also going to ask Elle to be her assistant coach. They can like work more closely. I'm sure that will help their relationship quite a bit. It's not as like focused on their outside lives. This one's definitely more focused on their interest in one another, and they're definitely getting tied up a bit in the life of Vanessa. So far I'm feeling like a 3 or 4 star, but I'm really hoping we get some more development outside of just their thoughts of one another. I honestly think it's been about a week since the last check-in that we've had. I don't know. I was kind of getting turned off to this because it was too slow burn for me. So I am on page 153. It's literally taken this long for them to really even begin to say they like each other. But it's not even, it's gonna be a fake dating kind of thing. I don't know. There was this initial burst of like, oh my God, they're so like into each other and they just are so compatible. They kind of gave us the setup for the romance that's gonna take place. We already know from reading the synopsis that something's gonna take place. And then it like kind of shut that down, and like a bunch of stuff has happened. And maybe that seems vague, and maybe it seems like, Angel, that's just how a romance book works. But I don't personally feel like that is. Like, I feel like we got this like, oh my god, like feelings for each other, kind of like crush on each other. I feel like there was a lot of scenes that were just dragged out a little bit too long for me. For instance, we're seeing a lot more of Elle and Vanessa and that kind of weird dynamic where she is technically her foster parent, but it's not a permanent solution, so that's kind of weird. And then we're also seeing a lot of the characters from the other books. I just feel like there's a lot happening that isn't related to the growth of the relationship, and that might just be me being selfish and wanting more romance in my romance. But 150 pages into almost like a 360 page book, and we're finally, like, it's too slow burn right now for me. I'm hoping now that we've kind of crested this mountain of like, now there's a fake dating thing happening, maybe we're gonna get some more, because honestly I feel like the chemistry was there initially and we're just not seeing enough of them together to continue to see the chemistry. Like, I feel like they're still so new to each other's lives that it just almost doesn't make sense for them to be fake dating. It honestly took me like a whole week to really get up the nerve to want to read it again. Hopefully it doesn't take that long to finish it. I feel like we should be able to finish it in the next like 3 or 4 days. That seems to be pretty on par for how quickly I read romance. So I'm gonna get back to eating and hopefully read a little bit more tonight. I'm not gonna apologize for looking like this. I will say though that I didn't read much more than what I did when I stopped talking to you last. I ended up at chapter 16, which means I read maybe another like 15 pages after I last checked in, and then I promptly started to fall asleep. Not because of the book. I think it's the act of holding a book that puts me to sleep. Against my better judgment, although it is the right move for me, I did buy the ebook, which was like $12, which makes me so sad. I hate when ebooks are more than like $5, which authors should get their money, but I'm like, crap. So I did buy the ebook, and I'm pretty much just gonna prove to myself that the ebook for me is always gonna be better at this point. I don't know. Hopefully next time I see you, I will be like here at least in the book. I would really love to be able to move on to another book because I feel bogged down with how the experience is happening, not with the book itself. So as I assumed, yeah, definitely picking this up a lot faster now that we are in the ebook version. I will say though, I'm not gonna finish this because I'm loving it. I'm gonna finish it because we're in this vlog, and it's not a bad book, but I do have complaints. I'm now on page 256, so we did make it through kind of to where I wanted to. But the complaints, the majority of the book, probably up to right around when I last checked in, around like page 160 something, has been over the course of a month, which I didn't realize. They mentioned it pretty quickly, like, oh my god, I've been talking to her for a month. And I was like, whoa, that seems like way shorter a time than what I thought was happening. I started to pick up on the fact that they were doing a lot of telling and not showing, which, especially in a book, makes very little sense. Because you have the time, and especially in a book where the pacing is so odd to me. I think the pacing was really weird in a section that I just finished, where they went out to dinner and they're doing this fake dating thing, and the dinner itself was about 20 pages long. And it just felt like it dragged on. I feel like the time is being spent on things that I don't care about, which really sucks because we have so many different things that could be focused on. Number one, the basketball. Number two, the romance. And I feel like those aren't getting as much focus, especially at this point in the book. I feel like at first I was really invested in this dynamic where Julie was coaching the teenagers, and then Elle is there with like the foster kid, is kind of avoiding her WNBA past because something happened. Now I just don't care as much. I think the foster thing was a really big focus at the beginning of the book, and now I'm not getting the sense that Elle is, not that she should be struggling, but I don't get this sense that it's as big of a part of her life as it really is. Like, it kind of just seems like it's not a significant thing that's changing her entire life when she did not have a child staying with her before this point. And then also, I don't know what the theory is. I'm looking at my phone. I just don't want to deal with it. But there's this concept in movies where if there's a gun in a scene early in the movie, you expect the gun to go off later in the movie. Like it's a visual plot point that you expect. And right at the beginning, when we first meet Elle, she's having this super intense migraine. And I was like, oh, this is going to be a story about chronic pain involved. And then we have the foster thing. We have Julie, who's just kind of like, the basketball is really important to her, but it's not her full life. I was like, this makes sense. And we've only briefly touched on the migraines again, and it was more like, hopefully she doesn't have a migraine around the basketball game, and then she didn't. So is there going to be like a major migraine situation at some point where it's going to affect them? Maybe that's going to be, because like if you read romance before, there's always this like third act blow up where it's like either someone doesn't tell the other person something and they break up, or they get angry over something that isn't the real truth. I don't know. So I'm like, maybe that's still coming. But the other part is like, I wasn't expecting Julie to have this like journey of trying to figure out her sexuality and like sexual preferences. It was kind of alluded to early on in the book because Julie's twin, London, is non-binary and queer. As a result, we're kind of seeing Julie be like, oh, like they have it so figured out, but I've just never done anything. They've never had a relationship. They haven't had any sexual partners. I think Julie has kissed someone, and that kind of becomes like a plot point midway or like toward the like 75% mark. It's just very odd because now we're in this like person trying to figure out what, like if they're queer, which I'm like, I thought that was the setup from the beginning. I don't know. It's not coming across how I originally understood it to be, which again, my own preconceived notions, but this reads queer romance. It's just me. I'm just being nitpicky, which sucks. Also, the basketball is not a huge theme. I feel like comparatively, and maybe I'll mention this like in the beginning or the ending notes of this video, but by comparison to the first book I read, that one was like 75% sports and like 25% romance, and then it would kind of like shuffle back and forth. But the majority of the book was about sports, and I loved it because I learned a lot, and I feel like it was very much from the point of view of someone who knows the sport. And then this has been like 25% basketball and then like 50% contemporary and maybe a little, I don't know, I'm really frustrated. I thought this video could be used for a change of scenery. So welcome back to my bathroom. Sorry, I'm adjusting the camera so you can't see all this. I finished it, and I feel like I really enjoyed the first quarter of the book and the last quarter of the book. And in the middle had the weirdest pacing, the weirdest lack of like actual romance, and I just didn't enjoy what this had on the table for romance. I feel like I got really emotional and connected to the characters, including side characters that we got to see. Ben from the second book was in this, and honestly, like, I wanted to weep because I just realized I missed him so much. I loved the characters, but I did not like the romance that was presented. I just feel like it was really spaced out. Like, I feel like the book could have said a lot more in maybe like 250 pages, not 350, 360. I don't want to like deter anyone. I think that if you come to these videos and expect like to find a book that you like based off my review, that's a weird thing to do. I still like would recommend this to people that really like sapphic romance. I just think that maybe my expectations were a little different than what was actually happening. Next time you see me, I will be reading Cleat because I have an audiobook for that, which means I will probably read it a lot faster and read it while I'm knitting, because I'm knitting a sweater. Well, no, I'm knitting a t-shirt currently. We have started this one, Cleat by Meryl Wilsner. I did mention I've read Mistakes Were Made before. I buddy read that with Michelle, I think a few years ago now, and I wasn't a huge fan of it because I feel like there was just some cringy scenes to me. Specifically, there was like, I think the first sex scene in that book. Sorry if you hear motorcycles, it's very warm out today. The first sex scene in that book, there was an issue with like doing some things with fingers, and then they weren't like, nobody washed their hands before or after. I don't remember. I just remember not really enjoying it that much. I probably gave it like a 2 or 3 star, but at the time, like, it was a very angry 2 or 3 star. From the get-go, kind of a little bit of animosity because Phoebe is a bit of a fangirl for Grace, and different than the last book we just read. It is like well known, and now that they're both going to be on the same team, there's again kind of some tension. However, in the second sentence of the book, it's talking about how Grace has an injury which hasn't happened yet, so it feels a little spoilery, but I really only read that part in the synopsis anyways. So I did cave and buy it on ebook. We're 3 books in, or 2.5 books in now, and it's just been proven that I'm in an ebook mood, so we got it on the e-reader. It is WrestleMania weekend. It's also like Easter weekend, but that's not the important thing for me, even though I do have a Jesus has risen shirt. I'm not a religious person, don't get excited. Yesterday though was the first day of WrestleMania and I didn't get a lot of reading in. It was so freaking hot yesterday. So I kind of read off and on, like in between fights or matches, whatever. And I got about 42 pages in, so we are on chapter 6 now. I'm really enjoying it. Like I said, I really like the weird dynamic. I think Phoebe is my favorite character so far, but like personality wise, I'm relating a lot more to Grace because she just kind of like is very serious. She also is dealing with some like either knee or hip pain, which she's trying to hide, because if the coaches or like the physical therapist gets wind of it, it could cause her to have to retire early because they don't want to create a like life-threatening, like debilitating injury. I think Grace at this point is attracted to Phoebe, but is like, it's just a player. I didn't mention this, but Grace is the coach of the team. At this point, they're not on the Nationals. This is just I believe it's like a Louisiana-based team. I'm gonna read a little bit more today, and I will probably see you tomorrow within my next update, but I'm actually really loving this so far. You know, me from the past is really an asshole because I set this up a little earlier and realized that I just put a dead battery in there the last time that the other battery died. So lovely. I'm so nice to myself. Another little check-in for Cleat Cute. I'm on chapter 16 now, and I definitely got a lot of reading in yesterday. We are 124 pages in. Have to say, I still really love their dynamic, and it got a little steamy in the last section. I didn't expect it to really go there, but yeah, especially after how the last 2 books were in this vlog, it picked up. Things happened, and I was like, oh, apparently I can enjoy reading a sex scene from Meryl Wilsner. So this has been already a great redemption from how I felt about that other book. I think that teasing, like especially teasing in like a queer romance, is definitely my favorite trope. It's not a trope, it's just how it's written. I think that that's also kind of how I've always had my relationships. I'm a very teasing, joking kind of person. And so seeing that in the characters is very relatable. It also just is like adding a layer of tension, sexual tension, that I just really love, because even though both of them are very much like, it's just gonna be a casual thing, there's just so much heat either in that sexual scene that I was talking about, or just like kind of getting each other riled up, and like, I don't know, it's also just so sports, so much sports, which is exactly what I was expecting and wanting from these books. This time I'm not gonna try to get rid of all that mess back there, so ignore it. It's so late in the video. You're gonna have to ignore it. Check-in time. I'm on page 234, and we are finally to the point where we're having like our 3rd act, not breakup, but like our 3rd act drama. There's always a drama in that 3rd act of a romance, and it's finally hit, but it's not something I'm super used to. Like, I'm honestly pretty surprised this is the route they went. Totally unrelated, but because I never give you, like, I haven't given you non-reading footage, I made myself a lovely, ignore the branding, this is made at home, but I made myself a iced coffee with a cold foam on top. It is brown sugar cold foam. Yeah, gone back to being a 2 coffee a day girl, but the second one is decaf because of my anxiety medication. This is kind of the same as the prospects, where it's like super sports. We're getting sports all the time. We're getting sports schedules. We're seeing like all the games. We're seeing all the practices. And I think that that is my perfect combination of how I feel like a sports romance fits into my tastes. Don't mind me, just me and my potentially next 5-star read. Also, there's a lot of like hair braiding content, which I really connect with for some reason. There's a lot of like French braiding each other's hair, which reminds me of like me and one of my friends in high school when I would play volleyball. Just the act of like braiding hair and like having your hair played with and braided, I don't know, it just is such a comfort thing for me. I finished it, and just like I was kind of expecting, I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I think that this one really was perfect, exactly what I was looking for in a sports romance. I feel like the prospects really set things up for me to understand that like if it's really heavy on the sports and then the romance is also like kind of competing, it's pretty perfect for me. With Grace and Phoebe, I feel like the sports was so heavily in the forefront that it was just amazing. I felt like I understood the pressures they were seeing, especially Well, actually, both of them had a lot of pressures going on. I feel like that was so important to the character development, and then also the romance between the two characters was very heavily in the forefront. So I feel like these two things combined were just like the perfect amalgam of what I was looking for, which I'll be honest, starting this vlog, I guess we can kind of do like a wrap up here. Starting this vlog, I genuinely didn't really have a lot of experience with sports romance, especially not queer sports romance. I've read a lot of Helena Hunting, or Helena Hunting, however the hell you say her name. I refuse to learn. And hers are all straight het sports romance. And so I knew at one point that that was extremely skewed, and it's all from one author. Those are very heavy on the romance and the smut, and the hockey is kind of in the background. But over time I realized I had started to acquire queer sports romance, and I feel like this was just, it was very eye-opening to realize that this is kind of what I love. It's having the like almost 50-50% sports to romance. And even though I really don't know a lot about sports, I feel like the only sport that I'd be able to really maybe connect with would either be like volleyball or horseback riding, because I have experience in those. Looking back at what we have read, The Prospects with KT Hoffman, which was a 5 out of 5 star. This was a book that I had started a long time ago, and then I kept thinking about it. I feel like Jean was a super fun main character, and I don't think we ever saw Luis's point of view. If we did, it was pretty limited, but Jean was just really fun and excited and just loved baseball so much. And he had this like family tie to it, so did Luis, but it was just like baseball is their world. And I loved that because it was kind of building off of this established way that their life goes, and then also throwing romance in, which I think is my preferred method of reading these types of books. And the fact that it was queer and trans, it was just the cherry on top. The queerness of it was really fun. It was, it did have some smutty scenes. It was pretty spicy at times. I hate saying spicy, but you know what I mean. I had a really good time with it. I don't think I ever looked up to see if this author has any other books. So while we're here, I don't think they do. They're pretty heavily advertising this book still on their Instagram, so I'm not sure if, I don't know. I'm not sure if it's going to continue anywhere else from there, but if they do, I'm super excited to read more because this author really nailed it. How You Get the Girl. If you've made it this far in the video, I think you realize that this was not my perfect setup for a sports romance. We were looking at characters that are no longer in a national professional sports arena. So one of our characters, Elle, also this one was weird with names. There was Elle and Julie. The L's really threw me off. I think because they're not personally playing sports, it was less interesting to me. I wish that the sports was more in the forefront, especially because you have like a basketball court behind them. So that was kind of upsetting, but overall I think it was still sweet. And I don't know, I really fell in love with the side characters and the side plots more than the actual romance. So for me, this feels more contemporary with romance, like a romance edition. And I'm not going to stop reading this author. I think this one might have been more of a fluke for me, but I am interested to read the first book in this series, and also I think there's a new book by this author coming out soon. So not a total loss. I just think that it wasn't what I was looking for in this type of book. And then our last book, Cleat Cute, I think that this was a huge redemption for me with this author, because when I read When Mistakes Were Made, it just felt not amateurish, but that's the only word I can think of. There were times where I wasn't connecting with the characters because, not this book, I'm gonna put this book down, but in that book, I wasn't connecting with the characters because I was getting so strung up on the storytelling, and there was also, again, some weird sexual scenes in which I was like, I could not get out of my head about them. Whereas this one, I feel like was pretty sexual throughout the whole book. There's a lot of scenes, and they felt very natural. So I was like, where was this in the previous book? And now that I've had a really great experience with this author, I'm excited to like go in and look at more of their backlog. And I don't think there's a lot, but I'm excited to read other books by this author. And yeah, I think I'm gonna be thinking about this book for a long time too. It was great. It was relatable. I saw myself in both of the characters, and I feel like the weird hiccups here and there in the relationship were very realistic. Also 100% the sports were like very forward. This was a book about these two people that had sports in their lives, and it was affecting everything, every aspect of their lives. And I think that that is what makes a successful sports romance, in my opinion. Here we are. We finished them. We finished all 3 books, which is not surprising. I love romance. Let me know if you've read these or if you have any other sports romance books to recommend that are heavy on the sports. Honestly, it could be any sport. It doesn't need to be something that I know. Although if you do have any like volleyball or horseback riding recommendations, let me know. I think I have one, but it's a straight one, so it's a little sad. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I haven't done a vlog in a long time, so thank you if you stuck all the way to the end. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate your time and your energy in sitting down and watching me read. Now it's time to tackle some more of my TBR, but I will see you in another video for that.